I helped my best friend move across the country. Then she blocked me. The next day, my best friend Ava called me crying at almost midnight saying she'd finally been approved for an apartment across the country, but had less than 3 weeks to move. She kept saying this was her chance to start over, and that if she missed it, she'd probably never leave our hometown. Honestly, I felt bad for her because she'd been talking about moving for years, so when she asked if I could help, I said yes without really thinking about it, which turned out to be one of the dumbest decisions I've ever made. Helping her move quickly turned into me doing basically everything. Every day there was a new emergency. She needed help packing, help cleaning, help selling furniture, help organizing boxes, help finding cheap hotels for the drive, and somehow every problem became my problem. Meanwhile, she kept saying things like, "I owe you so much," and "I literally couldn't do this without you." I should have paid more attention to how many times she said that. About a week before the move, she started acting weird. Not terrible, just weird enough that I noticed. She'd leave conversations halfway through, stop replying for hours, then come back acting completely normal. And whenever I asked how things were going, she'd give these short answers and immediately change the subject. I figured she was stressed. Moving is stressful. I didn't think much of it. Then her boyfriend started showing up in every conversation. I'd never actually met him because he'd already moved to the city she was relocating to. But suddenly, everything was about him. He thinks this. He said that. He thinks I'll be happier there. He thinks I need a fresh start. At one point, I jokingly asked if she had any opinions left, or if he'd rented all the space in her brain, and she laughed. But it wasn't really a laugh. More like one of those awkward fake laughs people do when they don't know how to respond. The move itself was exhausting. We spent 2 days driving. I paid for gas more than once because she kept saying she'd pay me back later. I paid for food a couple times too. Again, not a huge deal because she was my friend. Or at least I thought she was. When we finally got to her new apartment, things immediately felt off. She wasn't excited. She wasn't grateful. She wasn't even acting relieved. She just seemed irritated, like she wanted me gone. I remember carrying one of the heaviest boxes into her apartment and asking where she wanted it. She barely looked up and said, "Anywhere." That was it. Anywhere. No thank you. Nothing. Then her boyfriend showed up and somehow the vibe got even worse. The second he walked in, it felt like I'd interrupted something. Not because they were doing anything weird. It was just the way they looked at each other every time I spoke, like I wasn't supposed to still be there. At one point I walked into the kitchen and they immediately stopped talking. I laughed and said, "Okay, now I definitely know you're talking about me." Neither of them laughed. Just silence. The kind that makes you instantly wish you'd stayed in the other room. That night I paid for dinner because Ava said she was almost broke until her first paycheck hit. Again, not a huge deal. At least that's what I kept telling myself. The next morning I woke up on the air mattress she'd given me and, checked my phone. Nothing unusual. Everything seemed normal. I packed my stuff and got ready for my flight, then knocked on her bedroom door to say goodbye. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. Which was weird because I could literally hear voices inside, so I texted her. No response. A minute later, my Uber notification popped up saying the driver was arriving. I sent one more text, and that's when my message failed. I frowned and tried again. Failed. Then I clicked her profile and my stomach dropped because while I was still standing inside her apartment holding my suitcase, Ava had blocked me on everything. Every app, every account, everywhere. I stood there staring at my screen trying to figure out if this was some kind of glitch. Then the bedroom door opened. Ava stepped out, looked directly at me, looked at my suitcase, and said something that made absolutely no sense. She said, "I think it's best if we don't talk for a while." And before I could even ask what the hell she was talking about, her boyfriend walked out behind her holding a piece of paper that had my name written across the top. I looked at the paper, then at Ava, then back at the paper because I genuinely thought I was missing something. The first thing that came out of my mouth was, "What is that?" And neither of them answered right away, which somehow made everything worse. Then her boyfriend handed it to me and said, "It's just so we're all on the same page." On the same page about what? I took the paper and started reading. At first I thought it was a joke. Then I realized it wasn't. It was a list of expenses from the move. Gas, hotels, food, boxes, cleaning supplies, furniture, random fees I had never even heard of. And at the bottom was a total, almost $3,000. I remember staring at that number because my brain literally stopped working for a second. Then I looked up and said, "Why am I looking at this?" Ava crossed her arms and said, "That's what you owe." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so ridiculous my brain didn't know what else to do. I said, "Ava, I've been paying for half the stuff." And she immediately got defensive. She started saying she'd covered way more than me, that I'd promised to help with moving expenses, that I'd agreed to split everything. The problem was, none of that was true. Not even close. I kept waiting for her to explain what was happening, but she never did. Every time I asked a question, she'd just repeat that I owed her money. Then her boyfriend jumped in and started talking about responsibility and fairness like he'd been rehearsing it in the mirror. At that point, I wasn't even angry anymore. I was confused. Completely confused. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. This felt planned. Like they'd already had this conversation 100 times before I walked out of that bedroom. My Uber driver called asking where I was. I told him I'd be out in a minute. Then I looked at Ava and said, "You're serious?" And she nodded. Actually nodded. Like asking me for thousands of dollars after I'd spent weeks helping her was somehow reasonable. I told her I wasn't paying a dime. Then I grabbed my bags and left. The entire ride to the airport felt unreal. I kept replaying the conversation in my head trying to figure out where it came from. I honestly wondered if I'd forgotten something. Maybe there was some conversation I didn't remember. Maybe we discussed expenses and I misunderstood. I don't know. I was trying so hard to make it make sense. Then my phone buzzed. It was a payment request from Ava for the full amount. I just stared at it. Then another notification appeared. Then another. She'd sent the request through multiple apps like she was afraid I'd miss it. At first I ignored them. Then I boarded my flight. By the time I landed, things had gotten so much worse because my phone was full of messages. Not from Ava. From mutual friends. The first one said, "Why are you refusing to pay her back?" The second said, "What happened?" The third said, "Girl, what did you do?" My stomach immediately dropped because I already knew. Ava wasn't just asking me for money. She was telling people I owed her money, and judging by the messages, people believed her. I opened social media, which was a huge mistake. There was a giant post from Ava, several paragraphs long. According to her, she'd spent weeks helping a friend move who promised to split costs and then abandoned her the second she got settled. I literally reread that sentence 3 times because somehow I'd become the person who abandoned her. Me. The person who drove across the country. The person who paid for gas. The person sleeping on an air mattress. The person she blocked. I wish that was the worst part. Unfortunately, that wasn't where it ended. Because while I was reading the comments, I saw something that made my chest tighten. Ava wasn't just claiming I owed her money. She had posted the exact amount, and people were already commenting things like, "Pay her back. That's disgusting. I would have taken her to court." And real friends don't do this. I felt sick, not because I thought she'd win, but because I knew exactly how social media worked. Most people don't care what's true. They care who posts first, and Ava posted first. Then she made a huge mistake. Because while I was scrolling through her post, I noticed she had attached screenshots as proof. And one of those screenshots accidentally showed something she definitely didn't mean to post. Something that completely destroyed her entire story. The second I saw it, I took a screenshot before she could delete it, and suddenly I understood exactly why she'd blocked me the moment I woke up. The screenshot she posted was supposed to prove that I'd agreed to help pay for the move. Except she'd clearly cropped it in a hurry because right above the part she wanted people to read was another message from her that completely destroyed the story she was trying to tell, and I don't even think she noticed it before posting. Right there in the screenshot was a message from Ava saying, "Don't worry about paying me back for any of this. You've already done more than enough." I stared at my phone for a second. Then I zoomed in. Then I zoomed in again because there was no way she accidentally posted that. But she had. And the funniest part was that nobody in the comments had noticed it yet. I immediately saved the screenshot because I knew the second someone pointed it out, she'd delete it. About 20 minutes later, one of our mutual friends messaged me. All it said was, "Did she seriously post that screenshot?" So at least I wasn't the only person who saw it. Then another friend messaged me. Then another. Within an hour, people were starting to ask questions under Ava's post. Simple questions, the kind that are impossible to answer when you're lying. Why does the screenshot say she doesn't owe you money? Didn't she literally help you move? Why did you block her if she owes you money? The comments started getting awkward fast. At first, Ava tried responding. But then her answers started changing. One comment got one explanation. Another comment got a completely different explanation. People noticed. And once people notice inconsistencies online, they become detectives real fast, even when nobody asked them to. By that evening, the comments had turned into a complete mess. People were arguing, asking questions, tagging mutual friends, and digging through old posts. Then somebody found something even worse. A thank you post Ava had made a week earlier. A post where she publicly thanked me for helping with the move. Thanked me for driving. Thanked me for paying for gas. Thanked me for helping her save money. The comments under her new post immediately turned brutal, not because people were defending me, but because they were confused. Nothing she was saying matched anything she'd posted before. And confusion is dangerous when you're trying to sell a story. An hour later, the entire post disappeared. Deleted. Gone. No explanation, no apology, nothing. You'd think that would have been satisfying. Honestly, it wasn't, because the second the post disappeared, my phone started blowing up even more. Now everyone wanted my side. People wanted screenshots, people wanted details, people wanted drama. I didn't want any of it. I just wanted the situation to stop being insane. Then I got a call from one of Ava's closest friends, somebody I'd known almost as long as Ava. The second I answered, she said, "Okay, I need to tell you something." And I knew from her tone it wasn't going to be good. Apparently, this whole thing started before the move. Months before. According to her, Ava's boyfriend couldn't stand hearing about people from her hometown. Any of them. He thought they were bad influences. Thought they reminded her of her old life. Thought she needed to completely reinvent herself after moving. At first, Ava thought he was being dramatic. Then she slowly started agreeing with him, or at least pretending to. The problem was that I was the friend she talked about the most, which basically put a giant target on my back. Then things got even messier because, according to her friend, Ava kept bragging about moving completely on her own. She told people she was doing everything herself, that she'd handled everything, built everything, planned everything. There was just one problem. None of that was true. A bunch of people knew I helped. A bunch of people knew she borrowed money. A bunch of people knew she needed support. And apparently that started embarrassing her. The more she talked about being independent, the more people mentioned me. The more people mentioned me, the more annoyed her boyfriend got. Eventually, Ava decided the easiest solution wasn't admitting she got help. It was pretending I was the problem. Suddenly, everything clicked. The blocking, the money, the social media posts, all of it. She wasn't really trying to get money from me. She was trying to rewrite the story. If I became the selfish friend who abandoned her, then she could pretend she'd done everything herself. And for a little while, it almost worked. Then she made the mistake of lying to people who already knew the truth. A few weeks later, I heard things were starting to fall apart. Not dramatically, just messy.